Hello my beautiful internet friends. This video is going to be a little bit different for this channel, but I felt like it was necessary to share today because this has been really on my mind. If you have no idea what this title is about, James Charles is a really big influencer in the beauty community, and right now there is a lot of channels doing videos about him and a lot of buzz going around and people calling him a sexual predator and all different kinds of stuff. That title, being a sexual predator, in my opinion, is the worst thing a person can be. Being sexually predatory pretty much tops the list of worst traits a human being can exhibit, most damaging traits a human being can exhibit. And so I've been following this story because I am a survivor of sexual assault and domestic violence, so this is something that is near and dear to my heart, and I also have, unfortunately, a good deal of life experience to speak from. But keep that in mind, I'm only speaking from my life experience. I am not a professional in any of this. Quick background on the story, if you have no idea what I'm talking about. James Charles and I'm Gage are like the two characters in this story. James Charles has, I think right now, 15 million followers on YouTube. I'm Gage is much, much smaller. James Charles is gay. I'm Gage is not. He's straight. He thought he might be bi-curious at one point, but decided that that was not the case. I'm Gage and James Charles were talking for about 5 months when James Charles flew I'm Gage out to Coachella. They spent the weekend together and things did not end super well. They ended with James getting really, really upset that I'm Gage did not want to pursue a relationship with him, did not want to go any further, was straight, wasn't interested in being in a relationship with a gay man. James essentially said that Gage was manipulating him for his money and his clout, for tickets to Coachella, and that he was a really crappy, awful person, and said all that on social media in a tweet. There are also leaked text messages back and forth kind of going over the whole situation between the two of them. So let's pause for a second. What actually constitutes predatory behavior? What does that even mean? Our good friend Google says, a sexual predator is a person seen as obtaining or trying to obtain sexual contact with another person in a metaphorically predatory or abusive manner. Analogous, I think that's the right word to say that word, to how a predator hunts down its prey. Please keep in mind that predatory behavior is not just physically going after someone. Predatory behavior is often the mental and emotional manipulation that plays into things. Another important character to introduce, and one that I will be coming back to, is Tati Westbrook. She is another member of the beauty influencer community, and she has been good friends with James Charles since his career basically began. She's really helped him a lot, and a big reason why this is such a scandal right now is because he basically betrayed her in a totally different situation, which I won't cover. So we're gonna go back to what she said about him in just a minute here, but first, the text messages between James and Gage. Reading through all of them, you get the very clear impression that James Charles is pissed, that he is super, super upset that I'm Gage never should have been there, that he shouldn't have been carrying on conversations with him, that he shouldn't have done any of the things that he did if he wasn't interested in pursuing more of a relationship. He was really being led on, but he also didn't want I'm Gage to like talk about his side of the story. Side note, silencing people is never cool. He also threatened to bring in lawyers at one point if I'm Gage released videos about it, and the impression that you get is someone is very hurt that someone didn't want them back. Pausing there for a moment, I think most of us have been there. I think most of us have been in that situation, like just taking that at face value, being upset that someone didn't want us back. I've been there, you've probably been there. It feels like crap. It feels like crap when someone doesn't want you back. So at what point does that cross over from being a frustrating situation to behaving in a predatory manner? Threats and silencing aren't cool, and using the power when it comes to social influence and money and fame over someone is not cool, and I think edges, borders on, treads into predatory territory. But I do understand why people are split on this issue, because it could look like someone's just frustrated that someone doesn't want them back and that they feel like they've been led on. But my question is, why is it okay to get so angry at someone because they didn't want you in the way that you wanted them? Being hurt, yes, I totally understand that. I totally get that. But being a huge public figure and like sitting at the wheel of the social influence you have and steering it to hurt someone else's career because they decided that they were indeed straight, that bi-curiosity was just a passing phase for them at that point, that they were not interested in you, that's not okay. From the specific situations that are detailed in the text messages between the two of them, it doesn't look like Gage was ever pressured into do anything that he was uncomfortable with. That doesn't mean that the situation is okay though, especially when you introduce the power dynamic. James Charles has made jokes and tweets and memes about how he's always interested in straight people, like how he's always interested in straight men. And I don't think you choose who you're attracted to, but I have to wonder about the idea of turning someone gay. That's a huge power dynamic. That's like a trophy. to win. At least that's what it feels like to me, and that's where we bring Tati Westbrook's story back in, because she did talk about this behavior with James and how this is not the first time he's basically tried to turn someone gay for him, and how, a specific situation, they were at a dinner party and he was saying very sexually explicit things about a male waiter, and she called him out about it, and he said, "It doesn't matter, I'm a celebrity."
Your response was, "Doesn't matter, I'm a celebrity." So freaking gross, and you said that in front of my family.
Which really speaks to someone who is beginning to at least think in sexually predatory terms, that I can say what I want because I have power. That also sounds like other people in power who we've heard speak that I won't get into more detail about. But just because you have money, power, influence, social status, that gives you nothing when it comes to other people's sexuality, their choices over their own bodies, or what you get to say to them in public sexually, or in private. It doesn't matter either way. Like I said, I have life experience when it comes to this. I have been in the clutches of someone who is extremely manipulative, extremely predatory, and is actually a sociopath. They use whatever they can to manipulate you and make you do what they want you to do, against your will, against what they know you want. And I think that's where issues start to arise. Whenever someone is trying to make someone do something that they don't want because they want it. So if someone who is gay is attracted to straight people, that must be super frustrating. That's a bummer. If someone is gay and is attracted to straight people and wants to make them be gay for them, that's where there's a huge problem, and where I do think predatory dynamics absolutely come into play, because you know that they clearly are not playing in the same field as you. They are not interested in that. And anything you do to try to make them try anything with you is manipulative, is predatory, is not okay. Going back to the information we have about the James Charles, the I'm gay situation. If someone says, "I'm straight, but I'm also bi-curious, like I have questions about my sexuality, I might be interested in exploring that," there's nothing wrong if you're up for it to explore it with them, as long as everything is 100% consensual and comfortable at all times, and there aren't weird power dynamics coming into play where you're using any kind of pressure or anything like that. But there was one situation that was talked about in the text messages between James and Gage, where what it sounds like happened is that basically James Charles wouldn't stop crying until Gage kissed him. In the text messages, James says that there was more going on. "That's not the only reason I was crying," but Gage said, "You told me that you wouldn't stop crying unless I kissed you," and so I guess they did kiss. That kind of pressure is not okay. Basically, pressuring someone into any kind of physical contact, whether you're using emotional manipulation, whether you're just being emotional and you're trying to get them to do something because you're upset about it, because you're having a hard time, that's not okay. We as a society have to learn to understand that we have no claim over anyone else's body for any reason. It doesn't matter if you feel led on. If someone leads you on, that hurts, that sucks, that's not cool. But it does not give you the right to pressure them into anything. It does not give you the right to threaten legal action if you talk about it. And I think something else that's really important to bring up is that if you are someone like James Charles, who has power, money, fame, social influence, friends in high places, you have a responsibility to make sure that you are not using those to sexually manipulate anyone at any time. When you have power dynamics that are not equal, like for instance, a professor and a student, coach and a player, when you have that difference in power dynamics, it's really, really important that you make darn sure that you do not ever exercise that power. That's why a lot of universities have policies against professors and students being in relationships together. It's one of the reasons, because of that uneven power dynamic, where it becomes way more common that people abuse people because they have power over them. So if you're someone like James Charles, it's important to recognize, oh wait, I have a crap ton of power in a number of different ways in this situation, in this relationship. It's very important that I don't abuse those in any way. It's kind of like that line that we all know from Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. The more power you have in any situation, that you are very aware of that and you use that never against people and never for your own benefit when it comes to sexuality or anything sexual. So, is James Charles a sexual predator? I can't tell you, but from accounting of the situation, if you're talking to a waiter in a sexually explicit manner that they are uncomfortable with, if that was the situation, and your response is, "I'm a celebrity, it doesn't matter," that's predatory behavior. If someone doesn't want to kiss you, if they don't want to do anything remotely sexual with you, and you manipulate that situation through showing emotion, through getting really upset, and not just getting upset, because people get upset. Getting upset and then saying, the only way I'm gonna stop crying is if you do what I want you to do, that's straight up manipulation, and that looks like predatory behavior to me. If you are ever trying to change someone's sexuality so that it benefits you, that's predatory behavior if that is what you are doing. And it's worth mentioning that James Charles did come out with a statement about all of this, but he only touched on that situation very, very briefly in an 8-minute video about everything that's happening. In his apology video, he addressed the situation with the boy.
In regards to the boy situation, boys have been a topic that I've talked a lot about, and it's a topic that I wish I hadn't.
And basically said that he's learned from experience that it's not a good idea to have his private life be public. That isn't apologizing for abusing power dynamics. That isn't apologizing for using your platform and unleashing your fans, or stans, I guess as the cool kids call them, to injure someone else's career because they wouldn't engage with you sexually because you felt led on. That's not cool. Feeling led on sucks. But it doesn't give you the right to lash out at someone. It doesn't give you the right to shame someone for their sexuality if that's what he did. I think it is an incredibly serious thing to call someone a sexual predator, to say like that is their identity. But I think you can say that some of the things that James Charles is exhibiting are predatory signals, are predatory red flags, are predatory behaviors. And that's concerning, and I'm glad that people care. A lot of people don't agree that any of this is predatory, and I understand that because of the culture that we live in. But speaking from the perspective of someone who has been under the thumb of predatory people, manipulation sucks, and it can be subtle, and it can be overt, and it's much more difficult when you introduce power dynamics. So in my situation, the person who abused me was a pastor. He was a few years older than me, but he also held a position of spiritual authority over me. That is an unequal power dynamic, and silencing was a really big aspect of our relationship, was a big dynamic that played in, but it was always really subtle. There was always a reason I shouldn't talk about things. I shouldn't talk about something that happened that was, you know, played off as not abusive, even though it was, because he didn't want to look bad, or he wanted to tell someone himself, or whatever, which for the record never actually happened. So when I see someone using their power to tell someone else to be quiet, and if they're not quiet, they're threatening them with legal action and other things, it just makes me extremely uncomfortable from where I've come from, because when is silencing people ever okay? When they're just telling their story. So is James Charles a sexual predator? I don't know, but I can tell you that a number of his behaviors are really predatory, and that's extremely concerning. And I hope that he gets help, and I hope that he stops acting like that, because he's hurting people, and he'll continue to hurt people if he continues down that path. If he continues down a path thinking that because I have power or celebrity or fame or money or whatever, I can do what I want to some extent. So I'm not making any conclusions on who he is as a person, except that a number of the things that he's done are not okay. And speaking as someone who's been on the receiving end of abuse and manipulation and silencing, it looks really bad, and it feels extremely uncomfortable to watch. And I hope that he has a drastic change in actions and sincerely apologizes to the people that he's hurt. And that's my 2 cents. Thanks for listening, guys, to a video that's, you know, very different for this channel, but talking about surviving sexual assault and domestic violence and predatory behavior is something I have done for a long time on my other channel, Trauma Talk, and I felt like it was important to bring this up today here because it's something that's very near and dear to my heart, and I think it's worth starting the conversation over. Like I said, I wasn't there in any of these situations. I can only speak on the information that I have, and this is just my opinion. And that's not the tea. This is coffee. I pretty much only drink coffee right now. I'm like back in that coffee mood, you know? I'll drink tea for like 3 months and I'll forget tea exists and I'll just chug coffee all day. So we're not spilling any tea. We're sipping the coffee. Thanks guys for listening. I love you and thinking about you. I look forward to hearing your thoughts. I appreciate if you made it to the end of, again, a very different video for me. Thanks for listening. Bye guys.
Have heard from the sky all about it. Down the river, high tide.